Is we're going to be demanding respect from other nations. Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. Then if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you, et cetera, et cetera. But Canada has been very tough to deal with. One thing very important, I really would like to be able to meet with President Putin soon and get that war ended.
Today, we dive into President Trump's major address at the World Economic Forum. From international trade disputes to his vision for global peace, here's what he had to say. President Trump took the stage at the World Economic Forum with a bold message on global trade, international relations, and ongoing conflicts. Let's start with his take on trade relations with Canada and Mexico. President Trump emphasized the need for fairness in trade, specifically pointing to what he called a tremendous deficit with Canada.
Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. Then if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you, et cetera, et cetera. But Canada has been very tough to deal with over the years, and it's not fair that we should have a $200 billion or $250 billion deficit. We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody.
He highlighted America's abundant natural resources, suggesting the U.S. doesn't need Canadian imports like lumber and oil. On Mexico, the president described current negotiations as productive but stressed the need for equal treatment in all trade partnerships.
With Mexico, we're dealing with Mexico, I think, very well. And we just want to be treated fairly with other nations because there's hardly a nation in the world, and I blame this on us, and I blame it on politicians that, for some reason, probably mostly it's stupidity, but...
The conversation then turned to global peace. President Trump reiterated his desire to bring an end to the war in Ukraine, calling it a tragedy that should have never happened. He described the toll on human life, saying, "Millions of lives are being wasted, beautiful young people shot in the battlefield." He criticized the destruction of Ukrainian cities, likening them to demolition sites. The president expressed optimism about working with leaders like Russia's Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping to de-escalate tensions and promote peace.
One thing very important, I really would like to be able to meet with President Putin soon and get that war ended. And that's not from the standpoint of economy or anything else. It's from the standpoint of millions of lives are being wasted. Beautiful young people are being shot in the battlefield. You know, the bullet, very flat land, as I said, and the bullet goes, there's no hiding. And a bullet, the only thing going to stop the bullet is a human body. And you have to see, I've seen pictures of what's taken place. It's a carnage, and we really have to stop that war. That war is horrible. And I'm not talking economy. I'm not talking economics. I'm not talking about natural resource. I'm just talking about there's so many young people being killed in this war. And that's not including the people that have been killed as the cities are being, knocked down building by building. So we really should get that stopped.
President Trump also touched on U.S. China relations. He called for a level playing field in trade, blaming past administrations for what he labeled as unfair economic deficits. Despite these challenges, he struck a positive tone, noting a productive call with President Xi Jinping and expressing hope for cooperation on global issues, including the Ukraine conflict.
We've been having massive deficits with China. Biden allowed it to get out of hand. He's $1.1 trillion deficit. It's ridiculous. And it's just an unfair relationship. And we have to make it just fair. We don't have to make it phenomenal. We have to make it a fair relationship. Right now, it's not a fair relationship. The deficit is massive. I like President Xi very much. I've always liked him. We always had a very good relationship. We always had a great relationship, I would say. And we look forward to doing very well with China and getting along with China. Hopefully, China can help us stop the war with, in particular, Russia, Ukraine. And they have a great deal of power over that situation. And we'll work with them. And I mentioned that during our phone conversation with President Xi. And hopefully we could work together and get that stopped.
One of the most striking moments was President Trump's call for nuclear disarmament. He revealed past discussions with President Putin about reducing nuclear arsenals and suggested China would have supported such efforts. It would have been an unbelievable thing for the planet, he stated, describing it as a potential breakthrough for global security.
We were talking about denuclearization of our two countries, and China would have come along. China has a much smaller, right now, nuclear armament than us, or field than us, but they're going to be catching it at some point over the next 4 or 5 years. And I will tell you that President Putin really liked the idea of cutting way back on nuclear. And I think the rest of the world, we would have gotten them to follow. And China would have come along too. China also liked it. Tremendous amounts of money are being spent on nuclear. And the destructive capability is something that we don't even want to talk about today because you don't want to hear it. It's too depressing. So we want to see if we can denuclearize. And I think that's very possible. And I can tell you that President Putin wanted to do it. He and I wanted to do it. We had a good conversation with China. They would have been involved, and that would have been an unbelievable thing for the planet.
President Trump closed his remarks with a firm commitment to fairness, peace, and progress on the world stage. His address comes at a critical time for global diplomacy, and it's clear his administration is aiming for major changes in both economic and foreign policy. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates on global events and U.S. policy.